Where are you in those three? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much humility do you have? How much courage do you have? How much vulnerability do you have? Odds are that is your potential for transformation.
Whatever goal you have, whatever life you desire, better business, better body, better relationship, better home, better car, bigger impact, whatever it is, it's going to require you to transform because by definition, you would already have it in your life if you were already the person who could attract that or create that.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, number 1448. If you're waiting for motivation and inspiration, listen to this. If you did listen to this, then you listened to that. Today, for episode number, pretty good, right? Today, for episode number 1449, 3 things required for transformation. The person that will be talking about this has done 4,500 plus hours of one-on-one coaching. That's not including group trainings. That's not including group coaching. That's not including hundreds of speeches. That's not including thousands of hours studied of self-improvement. Thousands. Maybe a millions.
Maybe a million?
Maybe a million.
No way, because I haven't been alive for a million hours. I don't think. Well,
no, definitely not.
365 times 30. No, definitely not. 24 hours times 365. We don't have to do the math.
Yeah, we're not have time. You're the guy. You're the person. That was that was your introduction. So you came to me one day and you said, "Hey man, there's 3 things that are required for transformation." And I said, "What do you got?" And this is what you said.
If you know Kevin and I's story, he had, at 26 or 27, I forget which, you had suicidal ideation, side of a bed in New Jersey, just all the humble pie. And he texted me, and I had a car accident at age 26 that really, really, really shook my snow globe, so to speak. Everything I thought I knew about myself was questioned. I got the second chance that my father didn't have. My father passed away in a car accident when he was 28, for the new listeners. And I didn't know this until this year. I didn't realize this until this year. But back when I was in college, I took a fire protection course. And Kev, you'll recognize this because you went through the fire academy.
I did.
And there's something called a fire triangle. And the fire triangle is essentially the 3 things that are required, prerequisites, to create fire is oxygen, heat, and fuel. So in this case, let's say you have a lighter and you have, well, a lighter is probably a bad example because technically that's already a flame. Yeah. So the point is if you have logs on the fire, the log is the fuel. Obviously, if you smother it, there's no more oxygen, so it goes out. And so this fire, in order to have fire, you need fuel, you need heat. Yeah. You need fuel, you need heat, and you need oxygen. I now realize that in order to have transformation, I created something called the transformation triangle. You need 3 things. And Kevin and I didn't have these 3 things prior to 26 with his suicidal ideation and prior to my car accident. And the 3 things are, number 1, humility. Number 2, courage. And number 3, vulnerability. So I'm going to use Kevin as an example in this, but this is essentially what I did is I looked back at all my clients and I said, why are some of them transforming so much and some of them aren't? At first, I thought it was me. I'm actually writing a blog right now about this. I thought it was my coaching. I thought, okay, maybe it's my approach is off. Maybe that person has more self-belief. Maybe that person, blah, blah, blah. This is it. This is what I've come to realize after 4,500 hours. And it's more than an hour because I go way over a lot of times. And I have one client in particular that I'm thinking of that she's featured in the blog that I'll post in the show notes. It's actually technically dropping Wednesday, but it'll be dropped by the time this episode drops. So good. Okay, so the link will be in the show notes. But I now understand that prior to Kevin's suicidal ideation, I don't think he had the humility, the courage, and the vulnerability for the level of transformation that he wanted. Okay, so here's it broken down logically. Kevin wanted to start a successful podcast. He wanted to be more successful. He wanted to be with a beautiful, incredible woman. He wanted a great relationship. He wanted his dream car. He wanted a bigger, better home. He wanted to have an impact. He wanted to have a meaningful life. These wants were all there. But he wasn't yet the man that he needed to be in order to achieve those things. All of those things are actually a byproduct of him becoming better, him growing, him learning skills, him transforming. And so just like fire needs heat, oxygen, and fuel to exist, transformation needs humility, courage, and vulnerability to exist. And I've come to realize that in my coaching. And so now when someone doesn't have humility, I just kind of stop because there's no point. That's like having a log and having oxygen but not having any heat. There's no point. I'm just going to waste my time. Okay? And that's like trying to pour more oxygen into a log with already a bunch of oxygen. It doesn't matter, right? And so what they really need is humility. So you and I got a lot of humble pie in our mid-20s. We had our midlife crisis during our quarter life. And I'm very, very blessed. I'm very grateful, I should say, that we had that so early, because you and I ate so much humble pie of, and this is the analogy, the old phoenix burns down. It's where do you go? Kevin, in his story, he talks about how he hit rock bottom and how rock bottom actually has a basement. Well, when he's in the rock bottom basement, there's nowhere to go but up. There's nowhere to go but I need help. There's nowhere to go but, listen, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to get around the smartest person that I know. Again, that might not have been your thinking, but you picked me and I'm grateful because you thought that I knew what I was talking about, which in hindsight I did and I didn't.
I flipped a coin. I was like,
you
heads,
flipped the coin.
Alan, tails, anybody else.
Anybody else. But that's really what it required, was the level of humility. And then we talked about fear chasing. You have a ton of stories about fear chasing, which is courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is, I am afraid and I'm going to do it anyway. And you did a ton of that. And then vulnerability. Are you kidding? I mean, how many vulnerable conversations have we had? You've told me things that I can never talk about. No, I'm kidding. But at the end of the day, humility, courage, and vulnerability are prerequisites to transformation. And I coach a lot of women, I think probably 80% women. And a lot of times their partners, their intimate partners, sometimes don't have enough humility, courage, and vulnerability. And essentially what I try to help them with is, listen, transformation isn't going to happen if you don't see all three of those. And so I'll ask them, I'll say 0 to 10, how much humility do you see from your husband or your partner? And they'll say, 4. It's like, okay, 4. Okay. Courage. Now, remember, courage is what they're actually afraid of. Because remember, I could give a speech and I'm not super afraid of that. That doesn't mean it's courage. Now, what's really scary for me is saying I'm good at something publicly. That's really scary. So that's a vulnerable thing. Okay, so courage. And when I ask the question, I say 0 to 10, how much courage do they have? Things they're really afraid of. So I was really scared to go to therapy. That was courage, okay? Because I didn't want to do it. So they say, when you frame it like that, maybe 2, And then the last one, vulnerability, is almost always a 0. It's almost always like, 0. And again, I do think, statistically speaking, men struggle with vulnerability more than women, and there's biological reasons, and there's also cultural reasons of rub some dirt in it, bro, you're fine. Get it together. You're fine. And even as a kid, we as boys, we beat each other up, and it was all about who was the toughest kid on the block and all that crap. But at the end of the day, vulnerability is a struggle. I didn't even know what vulnerability was until my late 20s. And I actually think that I was still vulnerable in hindsight compared to a lot of men, but I didn't know what it meant. And if I didn't know what it meant and I didn't know what it was, what are the chances I'm proactively practicing it? And so for me, the vulnerability was the issue as a man. Humility, I think, was there more than I thought. Courage was definitely there, but the vulnerability was not, particularly in public. And so my transformation could only be, so what was that, a 4, a 3, and a 0, did I say? 4, 3, 4, 2, and 0, maybe?
I don't remember.
I think I said 4, 2, and 0. But anyways, that's a 6 divided by 3, which is 2. So that means their level of transformation is only going to be a 2. And so what I tell them is, listen, what's ironic about this, and I know a lot of our female listeners will definitely resonate with this, some of our male listeners as well, but what's ironic is it's not until after you leave him that he's probably going to transform. And I've had so many calls, Kev, where they're like, yep, I know if I left him, he would transform. He'd turn it all around. And you even talked about how Leah left you, and then you transformed.
Yep.
Because you finally had all the humble pie and the courage and the vulnerability of, crap, I'm lost. And I think that I try really hard to communicate the importance of humility, courage, and vulnerability. What are they? How do you build them? And honestly, you're not going to transform if you don't have those 3 pieces, just like you can't make fire without heat, oxygen, and fuel.
The humility one has always been... The clients that have humility have always been my favorite clients, just because I feel like we're on the same page. We have a shared desired outcome. I had a call with someone, he's also in group coaching, and it was just a great call. It was wonderful. He comes with questions, just super humble, very courageous, very courageous as well, very vulnerable. And those are the clients that have always done really, really, really well, because when you're humble, you're admitting you don't know everything. And really what you're doing is you're saying, I am open to feedback because I realize that I don't know everything. Doesn't mean I know everything, but the assumption there is I know more than you do in a certain arena. If you come to me for podcasting, the assumption is I know more about podcasting. Where if you're a parent and I come to you about parenting, the assumption is you have more experience in parenting than I do. Because you do. That's a fact. It would be very arrogant for me to assume I know better than you.
Definitely.
Based on the 0. I've babysat. I've had friends who have kids, but I've never had my own. I've never had my own child that's a newborn crying at 2:00 in the morning. I don't know what that's like. The humility one to me, because if you're humble enough to stick around, the courage thing, that can be borrowed. You can borrow somebody else's belief and courage. The vulnerability one's hard.
Well, for you, the fitness show you talk about, you went and got a coach, which shows humility. And that's you saying, listen, I want to win this show, and I know that I'm more likely to win this show with you in my corner, and you know more than I do because this is what you do for a living. So you tell me what to do.
Though, I mean, the way I went to a coach and said, okay, I trust you. Just tell me what to do. That was it. I didn't look at reviews. I didn't ask anybody else he coached, and he's a wonderful coach. He's really good. But same with you. I just said, all right, what do we have to do here?
So then how did you know? Right?
I didn't.
You didn't just roll the dice.
I knew I'd be better off. I didn't know necessarily where I'd end up.
That's humility.
Is that, reckless though?
I don't know, man. I think in hindsight, you have a thing with this. I think that you were more resourceful and intuitive than you think with that. Dude, of all the people in my life who I could have helped be successful.
I wasn't at the top of the list. In terms of pure potential, I was maybe meet somewhere in the middle.
You're hilarious, man. No, I think that you knew you needed to get around more successful people, and you knew that I was getting around more successful people, and you had the humility to interview me and ask me questions. Yeah,
it makes sense.
Hey Kevin, Kim here. Just wanted to send you a video to say thank you so much for your help on creating the Peaceful Productivity Podcast. I couldn't have done it without you. I knew you'd be lots of great help with the technical aspects of getting the podcast going, but you went well above and beyond that. You helped me with the strategy and you gave me all kinds of really great support. I think the key to success in business is a great attitude, and you have that in spades. You really walk the walk. So thanks again. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
I've been looking at what matters most. I used to think intelligence was what matters most. And I don't mean just intelligence like natural intelligence. I mean, I used to think awareness is what matters most. I don't agree with that anymore. Because if you have humility, you will learn more in the long term. I think we all start out with different potential, and I think some people are more naturally smart. I was one of those people in certain areas. And I think over time, if you don't have humility, I know a lot of smart people without humility, and they've gotten worse. I don't want to say worse, but they haven't gotten nearly as amazing as Brandon's a great example of this. Brandon came on the team, and he was vulnerable, courageous, and humble. And he just surpassed, I want to celebrate Brandon here for a second. Brandon just surpassed 1,000 days tracking habits. When Brandon interviewed for this opportunity to be on the NLU team 3 years ago or something like that. Yeah, it'd have to be at least 3 years ago. No. 3 times 365 is more than 1,000. So I think it's around 3 years ago.
I believe it'll be 3 years in December, I think.
Yeah. December 2020 or December 2019. I forget which.
2020.
Either way, he came on Zoom with us. We were in the studio. I'll never forget it. And we said, okay, brother, what are your skills? What can you bring to the table? And he said, honestly, I don't have any skills, but I'm willing to work really hard. And you and I were like, yep,
yeah,
this is awesome. Versus someone coming in there like hot shit, like, oh, look at my resume and look what I've done. Now, I think there is a drive to 5 there. If you do have skills, I think you also need to share that, but not in an ego way. And Brandon has been one of the most improved humans I have ever met in my life. I'm not even kidding. And it's because of his humility. He was scared of that call. He was super scared to meet us, but he had the humility to say, I need help. He had the courage to show up, and he had the vulnerability to say, you know what, honestly, I don't think I'm that great, but I'm willing to work really hard. And here he is 1,000 days later. And him and his girlfriend, I obviously want to protect his privacy, but he's crushing it. He's honestly he's achieving his dreams. I'll just leave it there. He's achieving his dreams, and I would put money on Brandon. I would, because he's hardworking and he has humility, courage, and vulnerability. And that's what's possible when you have that triangle.
What, I don't want this to be like a we talk about us thing, but how do you, I don't even know what the question is. How does somebody know who to surround themselves with in order to get transformation? Is it just those 3 things? Do you pair up with people who have that, or is there something else?
I think, believe it or not, the way I used to answer that question was get around successful people, figure out what they did differently, and then do that. And I disagree with that now. What I would do, I think that's actually dangerous. What I would do now is get away from the people that don't have those 3 things. I think that's more important than, I think getting away from toxic people is much more important than getting around successful people.
I would concur.
And what's even more scary is the wolf in sheep's clothing, which is someone who's really successful and they've lost their humility, courage, and vulnerability. And you know what's fascinating? And Kev, this is genuinely one of the reasons we don't have guests anymore. The people at the beginning of their journey, they had tons of humility, courage, and vulnerability. And then they transformed, and now they have a lot of success, and they've lost their humility. And it was very hard for us to interview them because it's like, listen, that's not how you did it. Don't lie to our audience. You're never going to hear me.
Vulnerability too.
I know. The lack of vulnerability was concerning.
I had a moment recently where I had that moment where I was thinking, I try to answer questions on podcasts as vulnerably as possible. Mm-hmm. Like when people say, what's your biggest fear? Fear and rejection. Failure. My biggest fear is failure and rejection. Hands down. Like in this moment, and I'll say this to them, like right now, I'm afraid. Like I have imposter syndrome right now. Like that's my biggest fear. Not something I evolved through 10 years ago. Not that. Or when people say like, what's your, I don't know what a good question for vulnerability would be, but I just feel like we asked a lot of people really good questions and we didn't always get deep, truthful answers.
I don't think we did, man.
I didn't realize that. I'm sure with some clients we did. Clients, some guests. I don't know what I say.
Some guests we did, and those are the interviews we liked.
Yeah.
Those are the interviews we probably liked in hindsight. I don't think we knew
You got to be on both sides.
Yeah.
Until you, it's almost like there should be a rule. You shouldn't be allowed to interview someone until you've been interviewed and vice versa. Because if you've never been interviewed, you don't know what it's like to be interviewed. So you don't really know what you would have done. And if you've never interviewed, you don't know what it's like to interview. It's very important to see both sides. I know that's the topic for another podcast.
Well, what I would say is, and I did want to read this. It's a quick excerpt from the blog, but I'll do that. What's required for real transformation? Here's what I know. Whatever goal you have, whatever life you desire, better business, better body, better relationship, better home, better car, bigger impact, whatever it is, it's going to require you to transform, because by definition, you would already have it in your life if you were already the person who could attract that or create that. And so transformation is required. Kevin and I have transformed over and over and over again on this journey, and it's been absolutely brutal in many regards. And when we look back to old content or we listen to old episodes, it's very challenging for us, because not because we were bad or because we didn't have pure intentions or because we weren't helping people, because we were. It's because we've gotten so much better and we didn't realize how little we understood in comparison to now. And in 5 years from now, we're going to feel the same way, because there's an infinite amount of transformations that you can have. There's an infinite amount of potential that we're not going to reach any level and be like, okay, we're good now. And so transformation is probably more important than what we talk about. And that's what today's about. So what's required for real transformation is the heading of this excerpt. Years into coaching, I started seeing some clients transform far more than others. And it bothered me. At first, I thought it was me. Maybe I was doing something different with certain clients and not with others without realizing it. After further analysis, I can tell it's my writing. After further analysis, however, it eventually became evident that there are specific prerequisites required prior to transformation that some clients and others didn't. Some clients had and others didn't. To me, it felt a lot like the fire triangle in figure 2. Just like how oxygen, heat, and fuel are required to create fire, I realized that humility, courage, and vulnerability are required to create personal transformation. Since then, I've never looked at coaching or transformation the same. We've all heard that cynical notion that people don't change. It's untrue, of course, but it's easy to believe it when we witness evidence all around us. We witness people trying to lose weight who are still obese, people trying to quit drinking who still drink, and people trying to quit smoking who still smoke. It's all around us every day. But what if people can transform themselves and their lives? It's just less common. But we've all witnessed evidence of that as well. And what if it's only uncommon because we have the wrong recipe? What if people can create lasting positive change, just like how we create fire with heat, fuel, and oxygen? What if we really can create transformation with humility, courage, and vulnerability? That's my thesis for this blog. And while I've witnessed hundreds of people who failed to change, I've also witnessed hundreds of people who transformed themselves and their entire life when those 3 attributes were present. If you had asked me 5 years ago, this is the end of the excerpt. If you had asked me 5 years ago what was the most important thing to achieve your dreams, I would have told you self-belief. I probably would have said self-belief 5 times. It's not. Self-belief, I now don't think is real unless you have humility first. Here's why. If you have humility, you will be willing to start small. Someone with humility doesn't say, I'm going to go lift 500 pounds. Someone with humility says, I'm going to go try the bar and I'm going to get a personal trainer. And then they build belief by keeping that promise, by achieving that thing. And then they slowly build their way up. And they prove to themselves over and over and over again through courage and vulnerability and trying and risk and failing forward. I think that real belief is built with that triangle. And I think that even if I look back at my own life where I believed in myself the most, it was always because I was willing to start so small. And I just had a lot of proof in that area. Now, when I wasn't humble is when I thought that meant I could transfer that to any arena I want. And that's not true. You'll notice, I mean, in fitness, I've asked you before, where am I being arrogant? You said in fitness a little bit. And it's like, oh, okay. So I've earned this self-belief in mathematics and in academics and in whatever, but I haven't earned it yet in fitness. And I now realize that was where my lack of humility was, is I had self-belief that transferred to a completely different arena and I applied it the same way. So hopefully that helps people, because humility and self-belief, I'm convinced, are very connected.
The interesting thing about fitness is fitness can go backwards, where there's different seasons. Like, you're probably not going to forget math equations. I mean, you might, but they're still there.
I think your brain improves more than your body over time.
Yeah.
If you do it right.
Yeah.
But it does degrade too if you don't use it. So
Yeah. Deep episode. The kid went off.
I would say your humility is the number one cheat code. I think that's why you got here more than some of your peers.
I appreciate that very much.
I will sing that because I do believe it's true.
Okay. You want me to play a guitar or piano for the singing?
Well, I know you're extraordinary at both. So
I am. Yeah, I'm world class. I'm the best you've ever met. There's not an instrument I couldn't pick up and be the best at. Totally kidding. Whether you're watching or listening.
Yeah, that's funny.
Very, very important. Next level nugget from me. Ask yourself, where are you in those three? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much humility do you have? How much courage do you have? How much vulnerability do you have? Odds are that is your potential for transformation.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to say?
I would say that's my thesis. Okay. And more importantly, assess the people in your life who you think might be holding you back. I would be willing to bet that they have low values if you were honest with yourself in those three things.
I dig it. Next Level Nation, we are excited to announce that the Next Level Dreamliner will either be out in Q4, fourth quarter, or the first quarter of 2024. It's a great way for you to stay on track. We have an app for tracking habits, but this is a paper version. It's going to have a lot more stuff. I think we're probably going to have a journal in there. We're going to have a bunch of different stuff. It's going to be quarterly. Super excited. One of the most exciting things, or the things I've been most excited about, genuinely, I've wanted us to have something like this where it's physical. We have a lot of digital stuff, video stuff. I like physical stuff, so I'm very excited to see. The team is working very hard and diligently, so shout out to the team behind the scenes, crushing it. Very excited to get it out, and you'll be the first to know when it is available.
If you resonated with this episode, there is a blog that unpacks the how. How to transform yourself and your life is the name of the episode. And it's step-by-step how to build humility, how to build courage, and how to build vulnerability, and how to transform yourself and your life. So the link will be in the show notes. And good luck.
Good luck. Tomorrow, for episode number 1450, what you focus on... Excuse me?
Nothing. I've never said good luck on the podcast before. I don't know why I said that. That's funny.
Are you done?
I'm good.
Can I start now?
Mm-hmm.
1450. It's a lot of episodes. Mm-hmm. What you focus on expands. That's the episode. Alan came to me and he told me a deep, dark secret that I'm going to share with every single one of you on the next episode. No, I'm just kidding. We're in very goofy moods right now. Mostly me. You're pretty serious.
This is a good one.
You enjoyed this very much.
Yeah, that was really important.
Good.
That was a big breakthrough. Big breakthrough. I hope it helps everyone. That's all.
Well, good luck. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. And at NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.
Stay humble. Next Level Nation.
Good luck.